Hello, everybody. So this is my last proposition. I just want to make sure I'm recording. It looks like I am. So this is my last proposition, and I feel a sneeze coming on. Okay, good. So this is my last proposition, Prop 12. And Prop 12 is kind of a, how do I say this, like kind of a historical correction of Proposition 2. So back in, I want to say 2004, 2006, California voters passed Proposition 2 by 63%. And what Prop 2 did was to basically say, look, you can't cage birds or cattle or whatever in a room that is not free for them to roam, right? I really focused more on the birds, on the egg-laying birds. So what ended up happening is the State Department of Agriculture said, okay, cool, that means like less than a square foot per bird. Right, and that shocked the environmentalists because they were expecting something along the lines of 2 to 3 square feet per bird. So once 2015 rolled around and the regulations got implemented, they weren't what people thought they were. So immediately there was litigation about it and back and forth. And what ended up happening was the proponents felt like they needed to put a new bill on. So you have this interesting little, it is sort of this like intra-environmentalist fight, right? On the one end you have the Humane Society, and the other end you have PETA. So the Humane Society supports Prop 12. And what Prop 12 says is it basically sets limitations. Like it sets exact feet measurement and says by 2024 these measures have to be implemented. Now that's the first objection the opponents raise. The opponents say, hey, look, you think you're very pro-environmentalist, right? But why are you pushing back these regulations? And the reason why that they're pushing back these regulations is because you can't put them all down and you can't implement them, in like a 2 or 3 year time span. Like you need more time. It takes time to do something like that. That's the real reason why they're granting the delay. It's out of practical necessity. But PETA opposes the bill. PETA basically says that the limitations, I think it's like 1 square foot per bird, that the limitations that Prop 12 are trying to support don't go far enough, right? PETA wants 2 to 3 square foot per bird, right? So that's the haggle. Meanwhile, here's the real lesson of Prop 12 is that don't write a vague resolution, okay? So when Prop 2 was written, it was written specifically to, quote, give birds free space to roam and turn around, end quote. That's vague, right? It leaves it up to regulators how to define that, and they define it in a way that the backers of Prop 2 didn't like. So this is why we're doing this again. Basically, someone screwed up. However, because you have that onerous, vague regulation, you still have farms that have to try to find a way to comply with it, whatever it means. So, in the meantime, egg prices went up by 33%. I'm going to link you that study, right? To Purdue University economics, economic professors, economists. There we go. Gosh, yeah, I've had a long day. I'm forgetting basic words. Sorry about that. But 2 University of Purdue economists basically said, look, in the first couple of years in post-2015 where this law was passed, egg prices went up by about 33%. And while that price decrease is slow, they conclude that based off of their study, prices are 9% above what they would be in other states, right, currently. Like the price increase was 9% higher, mainly because of Prop 2. So, of course, here's the biggest problem. Like, you have these cages that have already been built, right? If you have to create more cages for veal, so the other thing Prop 12 does is it adds more money, or it forces veal producers and other pig producers also to create different cage sizes, right? And so that's another arbitrary limitation, right? One that hasn't been followed because there have been a number of ways to get around that system, mainly through the power of vague interpretation. So now you're telling all those individuals that they have to, reconfigure what they've already configured, right? To use a very scientific term, conjiggering. but they have to reconfigure it, right? When somebody's configured something and that costs money, and then you have to basically bring it down and do it all over again, you're reconfiguring it, and that's going to cost even more money. So expect prices to go up. Even the Legislative Analysis Office, when they look at this proposition, says, look, prices are going up. Right? They're not disputing that. Like, nobody's saying prices aren't going up. Prices are going to go up. Right? Prices already went up on eggs. They're going to go up on everything else. And this measure also bans the sale of non-cage-free, as defined by the law, meat and egg. Right? So it bans that sale, and it also overturns the regulations that were promulgated as a result of Prop 2. So effectively what you have here is that the drafters of Prop 2 thought that regulators were going to do what they wanted them to do, and they didn't. They did something completely different, and so effectively making Prop 2 a giant mistake. That now you have, on one end, the Humane Society saying, okay, well, let's just codify these limitations right here. And then you have PETA saying, no, those don't go far enough. Right? Those are a joke. Right? So you have this intra-environmentalist fight, and of course this leaves out the main objection, which is, much like the taxes that Prop 6 are trying to repeal, this is a regressive tax on the poor, right? If you increase the price of eggs artificially based off of a state mandate, the companies are going to pass that off to the consumer in order to recoup their funds. That's what they always do. That's basic economics. So who suffers? The poor, right? Because while the rich person can take a little extra for their egg, the poor person can't. We're not exactly talking about a designer food here. We're talking about egg. We're not talking about avocado toast, right? We're talking about eggs and meat, right? These are things that people need to live. Well, yes, I know vegetarians exist, but most people like eggs and meat, and frankly, if I were a vegetarian, you could just make my gravestone in the next couple of days, right? So, this is a tax on the poor. It's a tax on everyone, really, but it's a tax on the poor because it artificially increases prices to fill a government mandate, right? That's all a tax is. It is an artificial, non-market-based increases of prices due to a government mandate. The only difference between a tax as we traditionally understand it is that taxes go to the government, whereas this tax is going to go to egg producers, but it's still the mandate that's creating the need for the financial change of price, right? For the financial adjustment. So at the end of the day, I mean, look, if the people who really want to support Prop 12 are people who think that the specific measurements promulgated by Prop 12 are adequate for animals. Nobody else supports this. Would have any reason to support this, frankly, right? If you think that those measurements are wrong, you're not going to support Prop 12. You're going to leave the regulations as they stand, and you're going to look to overturn them via law, which you can theoretically do, right? I mean, the thing with regulations is regulations interpret the law. Law can be changed. You can change the law as long as it doesn't change the basis of the initiative. That's the constitutional rule of how that works in California with initiative-backed laws and laws in and of themselves, and amendments to those laws. So the bottom line here is that Prop 12 is an attempt to correct a vague idea with definitive ideas, but it's essentially forcing a lot of farmers to go through the rigmarole of having to find the appropriate measurements again. And we, the consumers, suffer, right? And there's proof of all of this, which is why even something like the San Francisco Chronicle has said no, vote no on this thing, right? And they said vote no for the same reason I just mentioned about 2 minutes ago. The legislature can handle this. This is a fix that can be handled by the legislature. Again, just because an initiative constitutional statute is passed does not mean that the peripheries of it cannot be changed, right? As long as you don't change the intent of it, and as long as you don't change the goal of it, you can change its implementation via legislative, like passed law, like a normally passed law, right? So that's where this should be done, because this is essentially an inter-environmental dispute that's being resolved by all non-environmentalists, and it's just going to be something that's going to harm Californians. So honestly, if politicians want to vote for this, they should really. I mean, that's the other thing. That's the other objection to this, is it saves politicians a bad vote, right? You've got some moderate Democrats who probably aren't really going to be keen on taxing, especially if you're talking about rural Democrats, probably aren't going to be too keen on taxing the poor. They probably don't want that vote. This saves them from that. So 12 should be a no. Right? Let the politicians, let the legislatures put their money where their mouth is on this. And let the legislature decide how best to implement Prop 2. Honestly, I don't think that's really a popular vote. I mean, I think that's something that's a scientific basis, right? You're basically having the people ratify science. And so this isn't as academic as the last couple of ones. I apologize for that. I try to be kind of analytical, and I thought I was at the beginning. But honestly, at a certain point, you just have to look at some of these bills, and you just have to say, look, like, what are you trying to do here? Right? You are trying to have the people answer a thorny question for you without the people really knowing what the answer is. I don't know what free space is for birds to roam. I'm not qualified to answer that question. That's why we have government. That's why we have scientists. That's why we have governmental administrations working with our elected representatives. That's why a republic is preferable to a democracy. Right? It makes no sense for me as a voter to come in and say, this must be right. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is that this bill will cost poor people more of their money, their hard-earned money that they don't deserve to pay. Right? And that's something that we need to reject, at least for me. And if politicians in Sacramento want to do that, if the legislatures in Sacramento want to do that, I say let them own their vote, let them explain their vote. Right? But don't just fiat it under we're helping animal rights. So yes, I agree with PETA. For the first time ever. But anyway, I'm going to come up with another video late tonight. I'll publish it tomorrow. My election predictions. That's where I'm going next. I've got to crunch the numbers though. So anyway, thank you for watching and have a nice night.